At 10:17 a.m. on November 8, 1966, Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock adjusted the white feather he wore in his bush hat and settled behind his Winchester Model 70 rifle, 700 yards from a North Vietnamese Army sniper who had killed 9 Marines in the previous 3 days. The enemy sniper operated from somewhere in the jungle-covered hills west of Hill 55, South Vietnam. He'd never been seen, never been located, only detected by the direction of his shots and the Marines who died from them. Hathcock's commanding officer, Major Donald Hamilton, had explicitly ordered him to remove the white feather 2 weeks earlier. The feather, a pure white plume that stood out against Hathcock's camouflage, was called reckless by other snipers, suicidal by infantry officers, and an invitation to every enemy soldier within visual range. Hamilton had said it violated every principle of sniper fieldcraft, that concealment was survival, that advertising your presence was asking to be killed. Standard Marine Corps doctrine, written based on World War II and Korean War experience, said snipers operated from concealed positions using camouflage to remain invisible. The doctrine emphasized that snipers survived by being unseen, that drawing attention meant dying. A white feather visible at 500 yards contradicted everything the doctrine taught. Hathcock wore it anyway. His reasoning was mathematical and psychological. The white feather was a challenge to enemy snipers, a target that drew them into engagements where Hathcock's superior skill and equipment created advantage. Enemy snipers who might ignore anonymous Marines hunting them couldn't ignore an American sniper openly advertising his presence. The feather turned defense into offense, forcing enemy snipers to come to him rather than hunting them across endless jungle. In the next 4 minutes, Hathcock would kill the enemy sniper with a shot that entered through the enemy's scope, traveled through the scope tube, and struck the sniper in the eye, a 1-in-a-million shot that became legendary in Marine Corps sniper lore. Over the next 3 years, he would achieve 93 confirmed kills, an estimated 300 total kills, pioneer modern Marine sniper tactics, train hundreds of scout snipers, and prove that one Marine from Arkansas who learned to shoot hunting squirrels could change warfare. If you want to see how a white feather and a hunting rifle defeated enemy snipers who called him Long Trang, the White Feather, hit that like button. It helps us share these stories of Marines who wrote doctrine through action. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going deep into the Vietnam War, where one sniper became a legend. Back to November 1966. And the shot that shouldn't have been possible. Carlos Norman Hathcock II was born on May 20th, 1942, in Little Rock, Arkansas, to a family that knew poverty intimately. His father, Carlos Norman Hathcock, worked sporadically when work could be found during the post-Depression years. The family moved frequently, following whatever employment opportunities existed. They lived in small rented houses, sometimes without electricity, often without indoor plumbing. Money was scarce. Food was often scarcer. The welfare of the family depended on whatever income could be earned, plus whatever food could be hunted or grown. By age 7, Carlos was hunting to supplement the family's diet, taking his father's .22 rifle into the Arkansas woods to shoot squirrels, rabbits, and anything else that could be eaten. His grandmother, who helped raise him while his parents worked, taught him to clean and cook whatever he brought home. Nothing was wasted. Squirrel became stew. Rabbit became dinner for 3 days. Even small birds went into the pot when larger game couldn't be found. The .22 rifle taught him lessons that military training would later formalize. Ammunition was expensive. A box of 50 .22 rounds cost approximately $1 in 1949, which represented a significant portion of the family's weekly food budget. Each round cost money the family didn't have. Missing meant wasting money and going hungry. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Every shot had to count. Carlos learned to make every shot count by age 8. He'd wake before dawn, move into the woods while animals were still active, and spend hours stalking. He learned that squirrels had patterns, that they moved along specific routes through the canopy, that they made noise moving through leaves that revealed their location. He learned to move silently himself, placing each foot carefully to avoid snapping twigs that would alert prey. He learned to wait, sometimes for 30 minutes motionless, until a squirrel moved into position for a clear shot. His shooting technique was self-taught through trial and error. He learned to control his breathing, to squeeze the trigger slowly rather than jerking it, to follow through after the shot. He learned to estimate range by comparing the apparent size of a squirrel to the size he knew a squirrel should be. A squirrel that appeared as big as his thumb, held at arm's length, was approximately 25 yards away. Half that size meant 50 yards. His average was 17 squirrels per 20 rounds fired, an 85% hit rate on targets smaller than a man's fist, at ranges up to 50 yards through dense foliage. That hit rate was extraordinary for a child shooting iron sights with a rifle that weighed nearly as much as he did, but it was a necessity. Missing 3 shots in 20 meant the family went without meat that week. Carlos rarely missed 3 in 20. His education was limited and interrupted. School competed with work and hunting. Carlos attended when he could, but spent more time in the woods than in classrooms. By age 12, he was an expert woodsman and marksman. By age 15, he'd decided his future. He'd joined the Marines, the service that emphasized rifle marksmanship as fundamental identity. On May 20th, 1959, his 17th birthday, he enlisted with his parents' permission. The Marine Corps sent him to recruit training at Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego, where rifle qualification was transformative experience. The course of fire required shooting at ranges from 200 to 500 yards at man-sized targets. Carlos qualified as expert marksman with score of 248 out of 250, missing only 2 shots during the entire qualification course. His drill instructors noticed immediately. This wasn't recruit who got lucky. This was shooter with fundamentals drilled in by necessity. After infantry training, Carlos received assignment to the 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, serving as rifleman in infantry companies, but his real passion emerged at the rifle range. He spent every available hour practicing marksmanship, competing in shooting matches, studying ballistics, and wind reading. In 1965, he won the Wimbledon Cup, America's most prestigious long-range shooting competition, firing at 1,000 yards against the nation's best marksmen. The Wimbledon Cup victory established Carlos as one of the finest rifle shots in the Marine Corps, perhaps in the entire country. When the Marine Corps began deploying scout sniper teams to Vietnam in 1966, Carlos volunteered immediately. He arrived in Vietnam in September 1966, assigned to 1st Marine Division operating around Da Nang and Hill 55. Vietnam in 1966 presented unique challenges for snipers. The terrain was dense jungle, rice paddies, and hills covered in vegetation, where visibility rarely exceeded 100 yards. Traditional long-range sniping seemed impractical, but the North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong employed snipers effectively, picking off Marine officers, machine gunners, and radio operators from concealed positions. American forces needed counter-snipers, Marines trained to hunt enemy snipers using the enemy's own tactics. Carlos was assigned to the newly formed sniper platoon at Hill 55, equipped with Winchester Model 70 rifles in .30-06 caliber, topped with Unertl 8 power scopes. The rifles were civilian target rifles procured through base exchanges and modified for military use, not official sniper rifles. They were accurate but not designed for combat conditions. They required careful maintenance, and the Unertl scopes were fragile. Technical specifications of Carlos's rifle tell the story of making do with available equipment. Winchester Model 70 target rifle, pre-1964 action, .30-06 Springfield caliber, weight 9.5 pounds with scope, barrel length 24 inches, heavy target profile, trigger pull 2.5 pounds, adjusted by Carlos personally for clean break, Unertl 8X scope, 8 power magnification with target reticle, mounted on sliding external mounts that moved under recoil. The rifle's maximum effective range on human-sized targets was approximately 800 yards given ammunition, atmospheric conditions, and Carlos's shooting ability. At 800 yards, the bullet would drop approximately 400 inches below line of sight, requiring precise range estimation and elevation adjustment. Wind drift at 800 yards could exceed 60 inches in 10-mile-per-hour crosswinds, requiring accurate wind reading skills Carlos had developed shooting at Wimbledon. The controversy over Carlos's white feather started within weeks of his arrival in Vietnam. The feather, taken from a rooster Carlos had seen in a Vietnamese village, was pure white and stood approximately 6 inches tall when worn in his bush hat. Other Marines thought it was foolish. Senior NCOs told him to remove it. Officers ordered him to remove it. Carlos's explanation was always the same. The feather was psychological warfare. Enemy snipers heard about the American with the white feather. They looked for the white feather. They tried to kill the Marine wearing the white feather. That focus on Carlos meant they weren't shooting other Marines. It also meant they exposed themselves trying to get shots at him, creating opportunities for Carlos to eliminate them. Major Hamilton, the battalion executive officer, confronted Carlos about the feather in October 1966. "Sergeant, that feather makes you a target. Every NVA in the province knows about it. You're drawing fire that's going to get you killed." Carlos's response became part of Marine sniper lore. "Sir, with respect, I'm already a target. I'm hunting their snipers. They're hunting me. The feather lets them know who I am. When they come for me, I'll be ready. And sir, I'm better than they are." Hamilton couldn't argue with results. Carlos had already eliminated 12 enemy snipers in 6 weeks. His success rate exceeded any other sniper in the division. The feather stayed. November 8, 1966, marked the engagement that proved Carlos's tactics and became the most famous shot in Marine Corps sniper history. An enemy sniper had killed 9 Marines in 3 days, operating from hills west of Hill 55. The pattern of kills indicated this was not random harassment fire. This was a skilled marksman executing a deliberate campaign. The first Marine died on November 5th at 9:47 a.m., shot through the head while manning an observation post. Range estimated at 700 yards based on bullet trajectory analysis. The second died at 2:15 p.m., the same day, shot through the chest while moving between positions. Again, approximately 700 yards. The 3rd through 9th Marines died over the next 2 days, all shot at ranges between 600 and 800 yards, all killed with single shots, all dying before anyone could locate the shooter. The enemy sniper's pattern suggested professional training. He fired single shots, never following up even when targets remained visible. He never fired from the same position twice based on sound analysis. He operated during morning and afternoon hours when heat shimmer made optical detection difficult. He targeted Marines whose deaths would have maximum impact: officers, radio operators, machine gunners. Carlos studied the pattern and calculated probabilities. The sniper's shots came from an area approximately 2 square miles of jungle-covered hills. Within that area, perhaps 200 positions offered clear fields of fire toward Marine positions. Searching 200 positions would take weeks and cost more lives. The enemy sniper would simply relocate to different positions as Marines searched. Better approach was to make the enemy sniper come to a known location by providing irresistible target. The psychology was straightforward. Professional snipers had pride and territorial instinct. An enemy sniper who'd killed 9 Marines without being located would feel confident, perhaps overconfident. The appearance of an American sniper openly advertising his presence with a white feather would be perceived as either insult or opportunity. Either way, it would draw engagement. At 8:30 a.m. on November 8th, Carlos and his spotter, Corporal John Burke, moved into position on a hillside, 700 yards from the area where previous shots had originated. The position offered clear field of view across the target area, but also made Carlos visible from multiple angles. This was intentional. He wanted to be seen. Carlos wore his white feather prominently. He moved deliberately rather than tactically, making himself visible. He sat in partial cover that concealed his body but not his head or the white feather. He was setting bait in a trap that required the bait to be alive and visible. Burke, positioned 10 yards to Carlos's right with binoculars, watched the area where they expected the enemy sniper to appear. His job was threat detection and range estimation. Carlos focused on preparing his rifle and calculating the shot parameters for various potential target locations. The waiting lasted nearly 2 hours. During that time, Carlos remained mostly motionless, conserving energy and maintaining alertness. This was hunting, not combat in the conventional sense. Patience mattered more than action. The enemy sniper was out there somewhere, possibly watching, possibly moving into position, possibly unaware of the trap. At 10:17 a.m., Burke spotted sun reflection from glass approximately 700 yards distant, slightly elevated in heavy vegetation. He whispered without moving, "Flash. 11 o'clock, 700 yards, second tree line, mid-canopy." Glass reflection meant optical device, likely a scope. The enemy sniper had taken the bait, positioning himself to shoot at the American sniper with the white feather. But now the hunted became the hunter. The enemy sniper was focused on Carlos, probably settling into firing position, probably conducting his own range estimation and wind calculation. That focus meant temporary inattention to other threats. Carlos settled behind his rifle, adjusting position to aim at the reflection. He couldn't see the enemy sniper's body, only the glass reflection from what he assumed was the objective lens of the enemy's scope. Range was 700 yards based on map terrain features and Burke's estimation. Wind was 8 miles per hour from left to right, based on vegetation movement at various distances. He calculated the shot using formulas learned through years of competition shooting and refined through combat experience. At 700 yards with his .30-06 load, the 168-grain Sierra Match King bullet would drop approximately 324 inches below line of sight. He needed to dial 32 minutes of angle elevation into his scope to compensate. Each minute of angle equals approximately 1 inch at 100 yards, so 32 MOA equals 224 inches at 700 yards, close enough to the 324-inch drop when combined with his 100-yard zero. The 8-mile-per-hour crosswind would drift the bullet approximately 48 inches right at 700 yards. He aimed 48 inches left of the reflection to compensate for wind drift. These calculations happened almost automatically after hundreds of shots at similar ranges. The target was extraordinarily small. An enemy sniper scope with objective lens diameter of approximately 40 millimeters meant a target less than 2 inches in diameter at 700 yards. For comparison, the human head is approximately 8 inches wide. Carlos was aiming at a target 1/4 the size of a head. The margin for error was essentially zero. Carlos controlled his breathing, settling into the natural respiratory pause between breaths when his body was most stable. His heart rate, normally 72 beats per minute, slowed to approximately 60 as he entered the focus state that competitive shooters call the zone. His finger rested on the trigger, applying steady pressure of approximately 1 pound against the 2.5-pound trigger pull. He placed the crosshairs 48 inches left of the glass reflection to compensate for wind. The crosshairs represented his aiming point. The bullet would leave the barrel, arc upward due to the scope being mounted above the bore, reach maximum height at approximately 350 yards, then fall under gravity until intersecting the line of sight at 700 yards. Carlos began the final trigger squeeze, increasing pressure smoothly and steadily. At 10:18 a.m., the trigger broke. The firing pin struck the primer. The powder ignited. Pressure inside the cartridge case reached 50,000 pounds per square inch in 0.02 seconds. The bullet accelerated down the barrel, exiting at 2,700 feet per second. The .30-06 round traveled 700 yards in 0.77 seconds. During that time, the bullet dropped 324 inches under gravity, drifted 48 inches right due to wind, and decelerated to approximately 1,800 feet per second due to air resistance. The trajectory was a ballistic arc, precisely calculated to deliver the bullet to a 2-inch circle 700 yards away. The bullet struck the enemy sniper's scope at the objective lens, the front glass element. The impact shattered the lens and drove glass fragments and bullet fragments through the scope tube. The impact energy, still approximately 1,000 foot-pounds at 700 yards, was sufficient to destroy the scope and drive fragments through any hollow space behind it. The scope tube, being hollow and aligned with the sniper's aiming eye at the moment Carlos fired, provided a direct path to the enemy sniper's face. The geometry required for this occurrence was extraordinary. Both Carlos and the enemy sniper had to be aimed directly at each other at precisely the same moment. The enemy sniper's scope had to be aligned within 2 inches of Carlos's bullet trajectory. Any deviation in the bullet would have missed the scope entirely or struck the scope body rather than traveling through the tube. The bullet and fragments traveled through the scope tube and struck the enemy sniper in the eye, killing him instantly. The wound was catastrophic. The bullet and glass fragments penetrated the eye socket, destroyed the eye, and continued through the orbit into the brain. Death was instantaneous. Burke, watching through binoculars, saw the enemy sniper's body fall backward from his position. The body fell approximately 8 feet from an elevated position in a tree, landing in vegetation that partially concealed it. Burke confirmed the fall and probable kill, but visual confirmation required approaching the target. Carlos and Burke remained in position for 10 minutes, watching for any indication of other enemy soldiers in the area. Approaching a downed enemy sniper was dangerous. Snipers often worked with security elements. The area might be defended, but confirmation was necessary to claim the kill officially and to gather intelligence. At 10:28 a.m., they began moving forward. The movement required 90 minutes to cover 700 yards, advancing carefully through terrain that might contain enemy forces. They used proper tactical movement, one moving while one covered, staying in cover, moving during periods of concealment. They found the enemy sniper at 11:50 a.m. He was a North Vietnamese Army sergeant based on his uniform rank insignia. He appeared to be approximately 30 years old, well-fed and equipped, suggesting regular NVA rather than Viet Cong. His rifle was a Soviet-made Mosin Nagant M189-130 with PU scope, standard NVA sniper weapon. The scope was destroyed, the objective lens shattered with clear entry hole approximately 7.62 millimeters in diameter, consistent with Carlos's .30 caliber bullet. The scope tube showed internal damage where the bullet and fragments had traveled through it. The rear of the scope, near the eyepiece, showed exit damage where bullet and glass had exited toward the sniper's face. The enemy sniper's face showed catastrophic trauma. The right eye socket was destroyed, the orbit shattered, and the wound continued into the skull. The pattern was consistent with high-velocity projectile impact. The wound characteristics matched the theory that Carlos's bullet had traveled through the scope tube and struck the sniper in the eye. Carlos examined the scene carefully, taking photographs and noting details. The enemy sniper had been in elevated position approximately 12 feet up in a tree, resting the rifle on a branch, using vegetation for concealment. The position offered excellent field of view toward Hill 55. The enemy sniper's rifle was still shouldered, still aimed toward where Carlos had been positioned. This confirmed that both snipers had been aimed at each other when Carlos fired. The kill became legendary immediately. Marines who heard the story initially didn't believe it. Shooting through an enemy's scope seemed impossible, like something from fiction rather than reality. But Burke confirmed it. The physical evidence confirmed it. The ballistics confirmed it was theoretically possible if every factor aligned perfectly. Carlos explained it simply. He was aiming at me. I was aiming at him. We both fired at the same time. I was faster and more accurate. That's all. The technical analysis conducted later by Marine Corps ballistics experts calculated the probability of the shot at approximately 1 in 1 million, given all the variables that had to align. But probability didn't account for skill. Carlos had calculated range, wind, and elevation correctly. He'd aimed precisely. He'd executed fundamentals perfectly. The shot was unlikely, but not impossible for a shooter of Carlos's ability. Over the next 3 years in Vietnam, Carlos continued operations that built his legend and refined tactics that became Marine Corps doctrine. The most famous operation was the mission to eliminate a North Vietnamese Army general, a 4-day stalking operation that required crawling 1,500 yards through open field infested with enemy patrols, taking a single shot at 700 yards, then crawling back. The mission became known within the sniper community as the ultimate demonstration of patience, fieldcraft, and psychological endurance. Carlos was given the mission in May 1967 by Major Willis, the battalion operations officer. Intelligence indicated an NVA general, whose identity Carlos was never told, would inspect troops at a specific location on a specific date. The general was high-value target, a division-level commander whose elimination would disrupt enemy operations significantly. The location was behind enemy lines approximately 2 miles from friendly positions. The tactical problem was approach. The inspection site was in a cleared area surrounded by jungle, located in a shallow valley. Normal approach routes through jungle were heavily patrolled. The enemy expected infiltration attempts from the jungle, but one approach route was ignored because it seemed impossible. An open rice paddy field, approximately 1,500 yards wide, with vegetation height averaging 18 inches. Crossing the field tactically, moving at normal infantry pace, would take approximately 45 minutes and would expose Carlos to observation from multiple enemy positions. The field offered no cover, no concealment except the 18-inch vegetation, and was overlooked by enemy positions in the surrounding hills. It seemed impassable. Carlos calculated different mathematics, moving slowly, 1 to 2 yards per hour, remaining flat against the ground, moving only during darkness, and remaining motionless during daylight. When observation was possible, he could cross the field without detection. The mathematics said 4 days to crawl in, 1 day for the shot, 4 days to crawl out, 9 days total with no resupply, no extraction possible if compromised, no backup available. Major Willis questioned the feasibility. "Sergeant, the field is under observation. Enemy patrols cross it regularly. You'll be exposed for days. One patrol spots you, you're dead or captured." Carlos's response was characteristic. "Sir, they're not looking for Americans crawling at 1 yard per hour. They're looking for Americans moving tactically. I'll be motionless when they look, moving when they're not looking. I can do this." The mission launched on May 10, 1967, at 2:30 a.m., during moonless conditions that provided maximum darkness. Carlos and Burke moved into the tree line at the edge of the rice paddy field. They carried Carlos's Winchester, Burke's M14 rifle, approximately 200 rounds of ammunition total, 6 canteens of water, and minimal rations. Total weight approximately 40 pounds each. No radio, because radio transmissions would reveal their position. They entered the field at 2:47 a.m. and began crawling. The technique was specific: lie flat, extend arms forward, pull body forward 12 inches using arms, bring legs up, repeat. No kneeling, no raising the head above vegetation level, movement only in total darkness. The pace was approximately 50 yards per hour, meaning 30 hours of actual movement to cover 1,500 yards. Day 1, May 10th. They crawled for 4 hours before dawn, covering approximately 200 yards. At 6:23 a.m., as light increased, they stopped movement and settled into motionless position. The temperature rose quickly after dawn, reaching 95 degrees by 8 a.m. They lay in the field, exposed to direct sun, unable to move, conserving water, waiting for darkness. At 9:47 a.m., an enemy patrol crossed the field approximately 100 yards from their position. 6 NVA soldiers moving in file, sweeping the area visually, but not searching carefully. Carlos and Burke remained motionless. The patrol passed within 100 yards without detecting them. This confirmed that remaining motionless in 18-inch vegetation provided adequate concealment against casual observation. The day lasted 14 hours of motionless endurance. Temperature reached 98 degrees. Insects were constant problem. Fire ants found them. Mosquitoes swarmed. Moving to brush away insects would reveal position. They endured the insects motionless. By nightfall, both were covered in ant bites and mosquito welts. Day 2, May 11th. They resumed crawling at 8:15 p.m. after darkness provided concealment. 4 more hours of movement, another 200 yards covered. Total progress approximately 400 yards in 2 nights. At dawn, they settled into daytime position and repeated the previous day's endurance. Another enemy patrol passed at 2:15 p.m., this time only 75 yards away. Carlos could hear the soldiers talking. Again, they passed without detection. Day 3, May 12th. Crawling resumed at 8:30 p.m. The field's terrain began changing as they moved closer to the objective. Vegetation height decreased to approximately 12 inches, providing less concealment. Movement had to be even more careful. They covered only 150 yards this night. Total progress, 550 yards in 3 nights. Water was becoming critical concern. 6 canteens for 9 days meant careful rationing. Day 4, May 13th. The final approach. They resumed movement at 9 p.m., needing to cover final 950 yards to reach firing position. The movement lasted all night, 11 hours of continuous crawling. By 8 a.m. on May 14th, they reached the firing position Carlos had identified from aerial photographs. The position offered clear view of the inspection site, at range of 700 yards, identical to the scope-through-scope shot that had made Carlos famous. The position was in slight depression that provided minimal defilade from observation. Vegetation was approximately 15 inches high. Carlos prepared his firing position by very slowly over 2 hours, clearing a narrow lane through vegetation, that would allow his bullet to pass without striking grass. The clearing had to be invisible from distance, requiring removing only grass stems that were directly in the bullet path while leaving surrounding vegetation intact. The general arrived as scheduled. Carlos fired one shot at 10:23 a.m. on May 14, 1967. The general fell, killed instantly by a bullet through the chest. Carlos and Burke began the 4-day crawl back to friendly lines. They arrived 9 days after departing, having completed one of the most difficult sniper missions in military history. The mission established Carlos's reputation among the North Vietnamese army. They knew about the American sniper with the white feather. They put a bounty on him, offering substantial reward to any soldier or sniper who killed him. The bounty made Carlos the highest value target in the province. It also confirmed that his tactics worked. The enemy was so focused on him that they were offering money for his death. September 16, 1969, marked the end of Carlos's combat service in Vietnam. He was riding in an LVTP-5 amphibious tractor that struck a landmine. The vehicle burst into flames, trapping 7 Marines inside. Carlos, though badly burned himself, pulled 7 Marines from the burning vehicle, saving their lives. His burns covered 40% of his body. He was evacuated to hospital in Japan, then to the United States. His injuries ended his combat career, but not his contribution to the Marine Corps. Despite chronic pain from his burns, Carlos returned to active duty and was assigned to develop the Marine Scout Sniper School at Quantico, Virginia. He spent the next decade training Marine snipers, developing doctrine, writing manuals, and passing on the tactics he'd proven in Vietnam. The doctrine Carlos wrote became the foundation of modern Marine Corps sniper operations. It emphasized patience, fieldcraft, stalking, range estimation, wind reading, and the psychology of sniper versus sniper combat. His techniques were taught to thousands of Marines who went on to serve in every conflict from the 1970s through today. Carlos retired from the Marine Corps in 1979 after 20 years of service, his body broken by burns and multiple sclerosis that doctors believed was aggravated by his injuries. He spent his final 20 years giving interviews, writing about his experiences, and remaining connected to the sniper community he'd helped create. Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Norman Hathcock II died on February 23, 1999, at age 56 from complications of multiple sclerosis. His funeral at Arlington National Cemetery was attended by hundreds of Marines, including dozens of snipers he'd trained. They wore white feathers in their hats in his honor. The range at Quantico, where Marine snipers train, is named the Carlos Hathcock Range. Every Marine who becomes a scout sniper learns about Carlos, studies his missions, and understands that modern Marine sniper doctrine exists because one Marine from Arkansas proved that hunting skills, patience, and calculated risk-taking could defeat enemy snipers. His legacy isn't just the 93 confirmed kills, though that record stood for decades. His legacy is the transformation of Marine Corps, sniping from ad hoc deployment of good marksmen to professionalized specialty with doctrine, training, and culture. Before Carlos, Marine snipers were riflemen with scopes. After Carlos, they were specialized warriors with unique capabilities and proven tactics. The white feather, the symbol that officers said would get him killed, became the symbol of Marine snipers. Many Marines who followed Carlos wore white feathers in his honor. The feather represented not recklessness, but calculated psychological warfare, the understanding that sometimes the best defense is forcing the enemy to come to you on your terms. November 8, 1966 lasted 4 minutes from spotting the reflection to firing the shot that killed the enemy sniper. One Marine, one white feather, one impossible shot through an enemy's scope. When calculated risk defeated conventional doctrine, when hunting skills defeated military training, when one sergeant from Arkansas proved that marksmanship fundamentals learned shooting squirrels applied to warfare. Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Norman Hathcock II, 93 confirmed kills in Vietnam, pioneered modern Marine sniper tactics, trained hundreds of scout snipers, wore white feather throughout 3 years in combat, saved 7 Marines from burning vehicle, established Marine Scout Sniper School, changed how the Marine Corps thought about sniping. Not because he followed doctrine, because he understood when doctrine needed to be written. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support preserves these His stories of Marines who became legends through skill and courage. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We honor those who prove that one well-aimed shot matters more than 1,000 poorly aimed ones. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.